Before we begin, this isn't just a video, it's a place to come back to yourself. If your soul's been aching for silence, for truth, you're in the right place. So take a breath, and if you feel it, subscribe. You've lived your entire life obeying something you've never truly seen. You wake up because it's morning. You eat because the numbers say 12. You feel guilty for resting because it's not the right time. You feel behind because a clock told you someone your age should already be more. And you never questioned it, because who questions time? It's everywhere. On your wrist, on your phone, on every screen. It runs your school, your job, your plans, your goals. It decides when you're early, when you're late, when you're too old, when you're just right. It's the invisible ruler of your life, so constant that you've forgotten it's even there. You live by hours, celebrate years, fear decades, and mourn seconds lost, as if time were a god and you were its servant. But here's something no one tells you. The time you think you know, the time that organizes your entire life, is not real, not in the way you've been told. Because time, as you live it, was created, man-made, agreed upon, invented. Clocks didn't exist until humans built them. Calendars didn't exist until kings declared them. Time zones were drawn like borders, lines on a map that pretend the sun cares about politics. We say a day has 24 hours, but why 24? Why not 10? Why 60 minutes? Why 60 seconds? You were taught to believe that time is universal, but it's not. It's cultural, and it changes depending on where you are and when you are. Ancient civilizations used the sun, the stars, the movement of shadows. They had no seconds, no alarms, no deadlines. Their time was circular, seasonal, sacred. But then came empires, industry, machines, schedules, efficiency, control. And suddenly, time became a weapon, a system to manage workers, to organize armies, to define value. And you were born into it. You were handed a clock and told, this is reality, follow it, obey it, or fall behind. You think of time as something external, as something that's happening around you. But every hour is just a label. Every minute is just a container. Time didn't exist before you were told what it was. You feel it because you were trained to. You measure it because you were taught to. But have you ever stopped long enough to ask, what is time if no one's watching the clock? What happens when the numbers disappear? What happens when the sun is your only guide? What happens when you listen to your body instead of your schedule? You begin to remember something ancient. That time, in its purest form, is not numbers, not noise, not pressure. It's change, it's rhythm, it's breath, it's movement through stillness, it's the silent unfolding of now. But you've been told otherwise, so you panic when you're not on time. You judge yourself by deadlines. You believe you're failing if your life doesn't follow a linear path. As if clocks know your purpose, as if calendars understand your soul. But here's the truth you've been ignoring. Time, as you know it, was never a fact. It was a framework. And now that framework has become your prison. But what if it could become your doorway? They told you time was a law, that it moves forward, that it's fixed, universal, absolute. But they lied, because time, the kind you follow, was built, assigned, engineered, and not by the universe, but by humans. You think of time as something sacred, but what you follow is a system made of compromises. 12 months, 7 days, 60 minutes, 24 hours. Why? Not because that's how the universe works, but because that's how we decided to organize it. In the 1500s, Pope Gregory XIII rewrote time. The Gregorian calendar replaced the Julian one. They deleted 10 days to fix the math. Entire days erased, forgotten, because time is editable. Time zones invented in the 19th century. Before that, every town lived by its own sun. No synchronized clocks, no unified hours. No meetings across continents. Time was local, natural, imperfect, until trains needed schedules, until commerce needed control, until factories needed workers to show up on time. And so time became uniform, time became law, and slowly your biology began to bend around someone else's clock. But even now, with all our precision, atomic clocks, satellites, digital timekeeping, we still can't explain why it feels different, because you don't experience time by the second. You experience it by perception. A single hour in traffic feels longer than an entire day in love. A minute waiting for bad news feels like an eternity. But an entire month of routine, it vanishes. So tell me, If time is real, why is it so subjective? Why does it stretch in boredom and collapse in awe? Why does it disappear when you dream? Why does a single memory feel closer than yesterday? Because time isn't something you live in, it's something you experience through awareness. Einstein said it plainly: time is relative, not metaphorically, literally. The faster you move, the slower time moves for you. On satellites orbiting the Earth, clocks tick slower than they do on the ground. A twin in space would age slower than the one who stayed home. Time bends, it warps, it dilates under gravity, it fractures in black holes, it halts at the speed of light. And yet, you live like it's fixed, like it's a straight line. But physics says otherwise, and your soul knows better, because you've felt the truth. That time isn't a river pulling you forward, it's a still ocean you're swimming through. That past and future aren't places you travel to, they're illusions created by memory and imagination. That nothing truly happens in time, it happens in you. When you pay attention, when you move, when you assign meaning. So maybe you've been chasing something that was never ahead of you. Maybe time was never moving. Maybe you are, you, the consciousness, you, the perceiver, you, the one trying to measure the infinite with a clock designed for machines. So stop. Just for a moment, forget the time, forget the day, forget your age, forget what you should have already done by now. All those numbers were never yours. They were tools, and somewhere along the way, you mistook them for truth. But clocks don't know what matters, dates don't know who you are, and schedules don't know when it's time to finally wake up. You've been walking through life as if time were a hallway, past behind you, future in front of you, present beneath your feet. But what if that hallway doesn't exist? What if time is not a line? You say that happened years ago. You say, I hope it happens someday. But tell me, where exactly is ego? Where is someday? Can you point to it? Can you find it outside your memory, outside your imagination? No, because the past doesn't live in the world. It lives in you. And so does the future. You've never stepped into the past. You've never visited the future. You've only ever been here in the now, remembering what was and imagining what could be. But the now is the only thing that's ever truly existed. Everything else is a reflection, a recording, a projection. The moment you're in right now is the only thing that's real. And by the time you finish this sentence, it will already be memory. That's how fragile time is. Not because it moves fast, but because it doesn't move at all. You do. You move. Your awareness shifts. Your attention travels. Time is not a current, it's a canvas. And you are the painter. You bring the past alive when you recall it. You summon the future when you fear it. But those moments, they don't exist outside your mind. They are mental time travel, not movement, but memory, not destiny, but possibility. And you've been taught to build your identity from things that no longer exist. You define yourself by what happened 10 years ago, what you hope happens next year, as if who you are depends on ghosts and dreams. But you're not in the past and you're not in the future. You're in this breath, this blink, this flicker of awareness. And if you miss it, you miss everything. Think about it. You've never felt tomorrow. You've only ever felt your thoughts about tomorrow. You've never touched last year, only your memories, which change every time you access them. Your brain is not a recording, it's a storyteller, and every time it tells the story again, the details shift. The past is not solid, it's smoke, and the future, it's fog. So what's real now? This room, this breath, this heartbeat. But here's the painful truth. You rarely live here. You live in loops, in regrets, in expectations. In the endless mental projection of a timeline that no longer and never existed. You relive conversations you should have ended differently. You rehearse future moments that haven't come. You escape the present because it feels empty. But the present is not empty, it's just quiet. And silence scares you because it asks a question you don't want to answer. If nothing else existed but this moment, would it be enough? Would you still matter without your future plans? Without your past story? Would you still know who you are if time couldn't remind you? Because the deeper you go into the now, the more your identities begin to unravel. You stop being your age. You stop being your schedule. You stop being the roles others placed on you. You become something else, not a thing that's moving through time, but something still, something eternal, something untouched by clocks. And maybe that's what time has been hiding from you. that underneath the rush, underneath the years, underneath the ticking, you are already whole, not because of what you've done, but because you are here, fully, present, unmeasured, unfolding. Just this moment and this one again. That is where truth lives. That is where freedom begins. That is where time ends. You've been taught that time is reality. But what if it's just a curtain and something far older is standing behind it? What if the clock, with all its numbers, its digits, its relentless ticking, was never meant to define your life, but to distract you from something timeless inside you? Because when everything is silent, when the world pauses, when your body is still and your thoughts grow faint, you begin to feel it. Something that has nothing to do with hours, something that doesn't move but watches everything that does. A presence, a pulse, a truth so deep it has no words, so old it remembers before you were born, so still it exists even when you forget. And that presence is untouched by time. You've felt it before, in moments of awe, when the sky turned violet and your breath stopped, when music pierced your chest and you cried without knowing why, when someone died and everything around you slowed down, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. In those moments, you weren't thinking about the past, you weren't planning the future, you weren't measuring, counting, managing, you were just here, fully, naked before eternity. And it felt terrifying and holy. Because in those moments, you weren't inside time. You were outside of it. You were inside something else. Call it spirit. Call it consciousness. Call it God. Call it the real you. The deepest part of you has never aged. Never hurried. Never feared being late. It doesn't care what year it is. It doesn't track birthdays. It doesn't celebrate achievements. Because it lives outside the story of becoming. It doesn't evolve. It simply is. That part of you doesn't belong to time. Time belongs to it. And when you sleep, when you dream, when you fall into the stillness between thoughts, that's where it waits. Not rushing, not judging, not calculating, just being. Timeless, wordless, aware. But the world doesn't teach you to visit that place. The world tells you to move, to produce, to keep going, to stay on schedule, to fear being left behind. Because if you ever stopped, if you ever paused for long enough, you might remember. You are not your timeline. You are not your progress. You are not your delay. You are not the life you've built inside the clock. You are the one who watches time pass, but does not pass with it. You are the stillness beneath the movement, the silence beneath the seconds, the presence that time cannot measure. Because what is eternal cannot be rushed, and what is sacred cannot be scheduled. Every calendar will one day be erased. Every clock will stop. Every hour will be forgotten. But something will remain. Not a memory, not a number, not a name, just awareness. Pure, unfolding, alive. Maybe that's what death is, not an ending, but a return. A return to something that never moved, never changed, never worried about being on time, because there is no time where truth lives. Only now, only presence, only eternity disguised as this single moment. And maybe, just maybe, that's where you were meant to live all along. What happens when time runs out? Not in a metaphor, not in a countdown, not in the way the world screams, hurry before it ends. I mean, truly, what happens when time stops? When the ticking fades, when the pressure vanishes, when the seconds fall silent and you're left with nothing but breath and awareness? Have you ever felt that? In deep sleep, when there are no thoughts, no clocks, no language? Or in still meditation, when the past dissolves, the future loses meaning, and your mind forgets to reach? Or maybe you felt it when you nearly died, a car crash, a moment of danger, a wave of loss so sudden you slipped outside of sequence. Everything slowed. And in that space, you didn't think. You simply knew. You weren't inside time anymore. You were inside something else. Something vast, infinite, unmoving, alive. Maybe that's what happens when time collapses. You don't disappear. You remember. You remember that you were never really inside it. You remember that the pressure was never real. You remember that clocks were only ever noise, a background hum in a reality much deeper than measurement. And you remember something terrifying and beautiful, that you are not the character rushing through the script. You are the screen it's playing on, and the screen is eternal. The story changes, the scenes shift, the hours pass, but the screen remains. Unmoving, unaging, unconcerned, time collapses, and the self emerges. So maybe you don't need more time. Maybe you've had enough. Maybe what you need is permission to stop measuring yourself against something that doesn't even exist outside of your perception. Maybe the deadlines aren't real. Maybe the race isn't real. Maybe the entire system of progress and delay is just a trick of the mind trying to anchor itself to something solid. But time is not solid. It is wind and thought and dream. And if you could see reality without the filter of time, you'd see something terrifying at first. Stillness. Endless stillness. But if you stay there, if you don't flinch, if you don't run back to the comfort of the clock, you'd see something else emerge. Truth. That what you are has no schedule, that what you are has no age, that what you are has no beginning and no end. You are the witness, not the hours, not the moments, not the roles you play inside the timeline. You are what remains when time burns away. You are what breathes when the clock finally stops. And one day, in your final breath, in the moment between this world and whatever waits, you'll realize that time was only ever a layer, and beneath it was everything. Not years, not events, not accomplishments, but presence, pure, unfiltered, eternal. The truth about time is that it never truly owned you. It only made you forget that you were free all along. So sleep now. Not to escape, but to return. Let the weight of the hours fall away. Let the rush fade. Let the calendar go. You were never too early. You were never too late. You were never behind. You were always here. And here, there is no time, only eternity, disguised as now. Sleep well if you can, now that you remember what time tried to make you forget.